Alright, I figured before I boxed up the last one here, I would go through a quick run through about how it's supposed to go together. Most guys like to assume that, you know, everybody's mechanics. I've come to realize that the vast majority of guys out there simply want bolt-on. They may not know the actual reasons and nuts and bolts and stuff like that of what goes where. So I've just got it piled in here. It'll get packaged a little bit better before it actually goes out. I piled them in here for inventory sake, and turns out that I'm missing a bunch of parts. Okay, now the left nuts have an LH stamped on them. The Heim joints are the left thread. Okay. The Loctite should only take 2 of them. I would knead this stuff up before actually dispensing it. And it's one where you just tear the top off. It creates a little spout there for you. If you don't like this, you can always, you know, go get Loctite. This is Permatex. And basically, you shouldn't need it for the little bolt on here. It's for these bolts, okay, that go into the aluminum. The other stuff that threads, the Heims and the yokes and stuff like that, clevis, they have lock nuts on them, so none needed there. Okay, so when you go to start assembling this, the washer goes on first, then one of the coned washers, then the Heim, and I would put the other pieces together first. And do all of your assembly first. I would even get it aligned, then go back in, pull these bolts out, put the Loctite on them, then assemble it, you know, put these bolts back in. That won't change your alignment to pull it out and put it back in, because the turnbuckles will be locked down and everything. It should be golden. The front one should be the longer one. And this side is goes toward the front of the vehicle. It's a lot easier to put them together like this, and you will want to, as you're assembling them, you'll want to make sure your spacing is roughly the same. Okay, same amount of threads sticking out here. That way when you turnbuckle it, you know, it'll drive them in and out evenly. You don't end up too off center. So we're going to make the front of the vehicle that side. So this is the passenger side. This bar in here, this cut, denotes that that's the left threaded side, left-hand thread. Alright, there's still 1/8 of an inch there for it to tighten down into the locking portion. 4 for one arm, 4 for the other. So, we'll put the washer on. Now, the washer isn't absolutely necessary. It's basically just a safety factor. I consider it good etiquette. It's not required. That's assembled, okay? And as you can see, there is a huge amount of adjustment here. I mean, each side can go in and out at least 1/2 inch from where it's at right now. This clears the underside of the shock tower. This will help with clearance on the shock absorber. You may need to clearance it some more for coil springs. Okay, I think what I may do is I may go ahead and include 2 of these washers, and you can put them on the side that is closest. And the way it actually goes together is the ball joint is centered. That's your rough alignment. It can go backwards as you want more caster. The clearance over here will get greater. The clearance over here will get tighter. So I'll go ahead and I might have enough. I'll include 2 of these that can get put on the front one. And that'll just push it out a little bit further. Gain an extra room there with the nut. And so you can see that basically it's our Heim that is reaching all the way to the end. But let's see if I can hold that to where you can see that's a huge range of motion. And it seems to go down a little further And that's basically, that depends on where the heims are at an angle here, okay? That can get tweaked. You can find your middle range, because the arm, I think it's actually going to go in the truck roughly about like that. This will sit in an angle. Depends on your ride height, whether you lower it or lift it or whatever. But at ride height, you're pretty much going to want these heims to be straight up and down, okay, in the middle of the ball. That will give you the same amount of range of motion top and bottom kind of thing. You could play with that if you need more travel one direction or the other. Leave them a little bit loose, cycle your suspension, see which way it goes. Alright, when the 772 ball joint goes into the top of the hard body spindle, the taper matches. The angles are perfect. But it does extend through just a bit more if you can't tighten the nut all the way down. One option was, on the very first few prototypes that got sent out, we used lock washers. I didn't really care for that. You can, just simply get a stack of high quality washers. Use like, grade 8 or higher washers. Even grade 5 would probably be fine. But anyway, use the highest grade washers. It'll take up the space. The problem with just using 1 or 2 lock washers is the castle nut goes up far enough that the cotter pin becomes ineffective. So I wanted something thicker than that. So the washers work okay, but what I have been doing is I've been making these spacers. Okay, and it's basically 1 1/8 GOM with a 5/8 inch center hole. And I cut them to be 0.450 inch, just under ½ inch long. And so it does a really nice job of getting the cotter pin into the center of the castle there. And you could make it a ½ inch thick. And I think what I might switch to, because manufacturing these is tedious. It's not so much costly, but it's tedious. This is a pre-existing part. This is a high misalignment cone for a heim joint. It is probably ½ inch. It's 550, so it's 100th longer than the other piece I made, but it really does look nice and fit nice. And there's plenty of room to get the cotter pin in there, especially once it's cranked down. Cotter pin should fit in there just beautifully. I may just go to this. It'll cost me a few dollars more, but there won't be any manufacturing time. I can just order them, just have them sitting there, and one less part for me to make. You'll find one or the other. Originally I was thinking I was going to have to cut that down and I didn't want to ruin the chrome finish, but now that I have it mounted up and see how well it fits, I think I just might go with this option.